Welcome, everybody. My name is Sanam Jorjani. I'm one of the founding co-directors of the Oakland Literacy Coalition. So with us today, we're going to have Kareem Weaver, who is an advocate, an educator, and the founder of FULCRUM. He has been a leading voice for those of you who've been in Oakland. You know that he has been really a leading voice about the urgency in the moment, but also really helping us think through tangible actions that will get us to where we need to be. He'll also be leading an afternoon breakout session today, so you can catch him in one of those. We'll also be inviting Michael McDaniel, who is a family organizer with Families in Action here in Oakland. He is also a father of four and has also been an active voice with and for families in Oakland. And finally, Dr. Anderson, who is committed to transforming the communities that he lives in. He's used his own experience learning to read with dyslexia to advocate for others, and is the author of several children's books, which makes, I think, everyone on our team extra excited. We love having children's book authors with us. And again, the goal for our story, their bios are online, so I won't read beyond that, but the goal for today is for you to hear their stories. So we'll take a second to get them spotlighted up here so you can see who our speakers are. Awesome. Welcome to all three of you. I'm happy to be here with you all and for you all to share with us your stories and a bit of what you want to share with our audience about this theme of literacy and justice for all. I have shared with you all that we are asking everyone who, especially in our plenaries, to join us and in that reflection of what does it mean to have literacy and justice for all? What does it take? And what does that idea of literacy and the intersection of literacy and justice sort of mean to you? So to get started, I'm going to kind of ask you all to use that opportunity to share a little bit about that reflection, as well as use that as an opportunity, of course, to share a little bit more about yourselves. So I will leave it to you to kind of take away, and I will invite whoever wants to join us first to kind of help offer their reflection of our overall conference theme today.
I'm an Oakland native myself, you know, after spending 30 plus years in this city, you know, happened to fight for any kind of equitable chance to have positive opportunities. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that's where it starts at, you know, especially with literacy. That's where it begins, because once you don't have equitable access to that, you don't have those chances, you begin to fall into that you don't know what you don't know category that we talk about. And that's when the trap has been sprung. Now you are right to be held back. My brother and sister had that same experience. My sister, she was able to get it together later in life and have more success after she went back to school later. My brother, still a lost cause, wandering the Oakland streets right now. You know, and they're 8 and 10 years older than me. And my parents, you know, had to put me in a whole different school district out here just so that I can have opportunities and chances. And that's the thing, that literacy is kind of the keys to the kingdom when it comes to that. And in Oakland, we have so many people that they don't say it on the surface, but they go out of their way to try to hold people of certain demographics back, to put it politely. And for me, I've always had to be the one to do so much more with less, you know, just because of my color and where I come from. And so this fight has always been super near and dear to my heart. I'm not going to let my children have to suffer the same slings and arrows like me, my brother and sister did. It's not fair. We should all have the exact same chances as everybody else. Like, level the playing field. What you afraid of? It shouldn't take for people to have to come out in droves with pitchforks and, you know, and torches to get people to pay attention to our children.
Thank you for sharing that, Michael.
All right, I can go ahead and jump in. So, hi everybody, my name is Dr. Keyon Anderson. Very much in alignment with Michael's story, I feel like that there were some very basic tools that I could have received earlier in my education that would have made a world of a difference. I navigated all the way to high school reading at a second grade reading level. I had a very conscious understanding that I was only being promoted to high school because I had an IEP, and I didn't think that I would make it through. Fortunately, I met a teacher who really just was non-negotiable in terms of whether or not I was going to get it. And like, she set me down and she gave me the truth of the reality of what life would look like if I couldn't gather these skills. Not only did she have that conversation with me, but she taught me what dyslexia was, which is interesting because I was like 14. No one had broken it down in terms like, this is what's going on in your head and why some of those things just don't work and may never work specifically for how your brain works. And then she also was very specific at giving me skills to be able to overcome the learning challenges that I was having. So I went from starting high school, second to third grade reading level, to being able to take AP and honor classes by the time I was a sophomore. I did graduate high school to my personal surprise. I was also admitted to a number of colleges. I earned a bachelor's degree. I have a master's degree. I went back and got a doctorate degree from USC. And in this journey, and it's interesting because I did a panel with Kareem, or a meeting with Kareem like earlier this year, and I had never correlated my experience to a social justice issue. But the reality of it is that like my journey isn't unique. It isn't uncommon for little Black kids to not receive skills and learning strategies, what makes it possible for them to achieve massive success. So in having that glimpse and being able to look at my experience as not unique, I definitely feel like that it's an area where we definitely need to pay attention to providing equitable resources and people who really want to help people navigate the process so they could achieve massive success.
You know, I first of all, just want to thank OLC for hosting this event. I think it's a great forum and a great opportunity for us to come together and really, you know, try to figure it out and gather our nerve together to move forward in an informed way. You know, I recently got some videos from, I used to videotape everything. And I got some videos digitized. They're 25, 30 years old. And one of the tapes was of a classroom that I had taught. This is in Oakland. This is mid-90s, Oakland Unified, Highland stand-up. And I was stunned. I was inspired by the, you know, the sight of my old students and all that, all the, you know, some of them are my Facebook friends now. They're in their mid-30s, you know, families of their own. And I also really grieved for what I saw, which was, this is a fourth, fifth grade combination class, and all Black faces. You know, Oakland has changed over the years, but at that point, every student in my class was African-American. And I think I may have had 8 kids I could read. The other 27 who were officially on my roll couldn't read. The other 8 or 9 who were in the classroom just because, you know, Black guys, they asked them to Mr. Weaver, they were all over the place. But I had about 8 or 9 I could read reasonably, not on grade level, but just reasonably. And I thought about that. That was a time where the adults were arguing about how to teach reading. Those were the reading wars and all that nonsense that was going on. Even though the science was out, even though the research consensus was out, the adults were doing their thing. They were adulting, and the kids were suffering. And I had a front row seat, and I was just watching. Matter of fact, there was one young man. There was one young man who, and I didn't even remember this happening. He read a sentence on the board, and I said, everybody, it was just him and I in the room. This is his first time reading a sentence. And then I said, he was tested and admitted into the gifted and talented program in first grade. And I lost it. I lost it. 25, 30 years later, I just lost it. To think about, you know, man, we got Dr. Andersons all over the place. We got kids who, so what I'm bringing with me today is the reality of where we are, where we haven't been, and what we as adults has failed to do, which is put our adult stuff to the side. Look at what needs to be done for our kids, the change management. That'll be my workshop later on today. The change management that has to happen, because it's not all about a workshop. We have work to do, the skills we have to build, the conversations we have to have, because there's too many young people out there not being served the way they need to, and it's all colors. All colors. all colors, all ethnic groups, every language groups. And so I'm just grateful for this opportunity. That was a sobering reminder for me, that video. And, we need forums like this to kind of let that out. This is my therapy a little bit, so now you're going to have to forgive me a little bit. I had to work it out because I was part of it. I did the best I could, and I helped him get, to the next level, but then he's off into the system. So we have to be aligned. It can't just be, I'm so grateful for Dr. Anderson's teacher who stepped up in 9th grade, but we need folks all along the way. We need paraprofessionals and principals and teachers and superintendents and chief academic officers and network soups. And we need everybody lined up so that we can march forward together in a unified way.
Thank you to all three of you for sharing your own stories, for being the honesty and authenticity that comes through. I think I'm looking at the chat and I think it's resonating with so many people. I'd like to ask you all to share a bit about, one of the things we want to do today is also hold space to vision. I think I saw in the chat box for our morning prompt, finish the sentence, what does literacy and justice for all start with? And there are many comments about it starts with belief. It starts with belief that we can do better. It starts with demanding that we can do better. It starts with the expectation that we will do better and right by kids all the way into adulthood. And so I want to also ask us to take that opportunity to think about having that vision and holding space for believing and understanding what can be possible. And so I invite you to share, our mission as an organization is to ensure that every Oakland child learns and loves to read and well into adulthood, that they carry that with them, that they become lifelong learners. We all see ourselves as lifelong learners. I think everyone here, I imagine by attending, you are seeing yourself as a learner also into adulthood. So what does a movement for literacy and justice for all look like? What's possible? And what does it take? What does it need for us to all ensure that we are being those adults who aren't just moving along adulting, but are adulting in a way that is having the right outcomes for our children and our families and our communities?
I can jump right in. I'm a firm believer that we have to be able to just accept the historical context in which this issue is placed in. Oftentimes when I'm having the conversations with people who are really excited about doing the work, they're starting the conversations as though this has started this year. And I think that there is a need to sort of recognize that systematically, this is something that has occurred with some intentionality. In order for us to, we recognize that, and then after we recognize that, we can begin to actionalize how we deal with those things. Kids of color not knowing how to read, it's not like this thing where it's a surprise. We know the science, we know it works, we know what the strategies are. The fact that these things are not very intentionally being utilized speaks to a larger issue. And I think unless we sort of address that, it's hard to be able to move forward because we're always starting at the new start.
Thank you for that, Dr. Anderson. It's kind of pick up from there. I think I like a lot of what it takes, literacy and justice. Like I said determination in the chat, but I feel like, as we've been talking, it's moreover, it starts with accountability. It starts with the accountability piece because we could keep dodging these issues and running circles around it all day. That elephant is still going to be in the room. We got to this place through racism, straight up. We got here from racism. Black people are still constantly being, held back, left behind, and pushed to the side. And when you start to do that at an early age, you start to get people to believe what they can't be. And one of the things that's the most important to me about this work and why it's so near and dear to my heart is because I feel like you have to show kids something else. You have to show them that you can be something different. When systemic racism sits in their face and constantly tells them about what they can't be, what they can achieve, and what they, where they can't go, all because based on what color their skin is, You have to give them some kind of a different positive example. You know, I'm a military veteran. I worked, over 12 years for the Postal Service, and that was all before I came into this work. And, came back home and was like, somebody needs to really stand up for this city. Somebody that came from this city. I'm from deep East Oakland, one of the worst parts of Oakland, especially going back about 30 years. They used to call where I grew up the kill zone. And that's just because that's what happened there, constantly. You had to be worried about walking around and going outside, and now that the landscape has changed, people want to act like the reality isn't that we arrived at this place straight up through racism and through a bunch of things and tenets that were set into place so that we would fail. And so that that's where the whole pipeline to prison came from. That's alive and real in this city. And as long as we don't have the determination to hold the people that have put these things into place accountable and make sure that they actually do the work for change. You could put things like early dyslexia screening in place. You could put things like an actual scientific-based curriculum in place and have these things there before these kids have these issues. They should have their courses should be lined up so that A through G completion is not an issue when they get to high school, because they missed all these other classes. Why? Because it started off with them being behind in their grade level for reading. Like, it starts so early, and then people just want to be like, oh no, Jimmy's fine. Oh, he's having problems at home. Give him a D and push him through. And then he gets that, out of high school and finds out your football career is over, bro, because you in the JUCO circuit, because you can't read, because you can't pass the classes. It's a travesty, and it's something that shouldn't happen so often over and over and over again. We're too progressive and too enlightened of a city, or at least we like to think that we are. And if that's what we are, then we need to actually be about it. Hold yourself accountable for that change and how you present yourself to your children. Show them something different. Don't show them the dude standing on the corner selling drugs. Don't show them that dude. I grew up around that same dude. Them dudes respect me 10 times more than the same dudes that they learned how to trap from. Because I went out there, I went to the army, I protected something, and I came back home to do the same. And so I refuse to stand by while it keeps on happening, even if I got to change it with my own hands. But it starts with people being accountable for the systems that they already created. They made this, a stacked deck against us. I grew up my whole life saying, why do I feel like the deck is stacked against me? It just ain't fair. Then I become, I grow up and I get older and I find out, oh, wait, no, it's true. It wasn't just a feeling. Society's really been set up to hold people that look like me and come from where I come from back. And I don't know about you guys, but enough is enough.
I don't think I need to say anything else about it. I could go on for a long time on that topics, but I think enough is said on that.
That was very powerfully said. And so I do think, I'm hearing a few things coming across. It's the how we got here has to be centered in the conversation. The accountability. Thank you, Michael, for reminding us, not just we talk about holding systems accountable, but what are we going to do each individually and hold ourselves accountable, and still centering that belief that kids can achieve if we give them what they need. And you name some of the things that they inevitably will need to be successful. I want to ask you all to speak kind of directly to our audience and us as a group around what you hope we can do over the next 2 days, what you hope we carry with us as participants in this conference, things to look for, things to be asking, a lens in which to carry our conversation and consider, so that we can all hopefully leave here heading into the next week and the next however many months of our work, thinking or moving differently in the spaces that we occupy. That's always our goal, is if we are coming together and spending our time to do any kind of connecting or learning, that it changes, at least in some small way, the way we move and the way we act. And so I will leave it there for the three of you. And maybe Kareem, you can kick us off.
I'll jump in on this one. Thank you. So I want to challenge everybody. We can all easily point fingers. Blame is it's such an intoxicating thing to be able to blame and talk about whose fault it is. And there's plenty of blame to go around. plenty. But today and tomorrow, I would push you, I would urge you, I'll plead with you to look in the mirror. As I'm continuing to do, there are some things that each of us individually can do, some places where we can grow, not just from a skills perspective, but from a mindset, from a relational standpoint. Maybe the key is getting along with somebody you don't get along with, talking to somebody you never talked with because they're in a different organization. Maybe it's a matter of suspending ideological beliefs around reading instruction to research and get more information. Maybe what I want us to take away from this is to press pause on our tribalism for a second. Even if you fully believe science of reading is right, reading instruction is, I don't care. Press pause, suspend belief, engage authentically, be willing to be wrong, and be willing to share your truths. That's the ask. That's all you can, I think that's all you can ask, especially over just a couple of days. So I would offer that to everybody. Engage authentically, press pause on all of the background noise, and just go in there and see what we can build together.
If I could add one thing, and this is something that I try to impress upon my students now all the time, because they all have the intent to go out and help people. We have to reflect and sort of note that our intentions are not our impacts, and they don't always align. I would imagine that throughout my education journey, no teacher vocalized out loud in common space, I really want to see these kids fail. And there are a lot of people who had the best of intentions in terms of how they tried to show up and how they tried to help. And for us, I believe we really have to pause and we have to figure out, is this working? Like, maybe it worked for Joe Smo over there, but with this particular kid in this particular situation, does this work? And we have to be willing to sort of evaluate that sometimes our intentions don't lead to the impact that we desire. And when we get to that realization, we have to begin to change how we're operationalizing. We can't sort of rest in, this is my level of comfort, and these are the things that I'm going to do, or this is my approach, because that approach doesn't always work. So I think that over the next couple of days and throughout our careers, I think it's necessary to always scale, is my intention meeting the desired impact that I would like to have? And if it's not, then we need to make adjustments.
Well, first off, thank you both, Kareem and Dr. Anderson, prompting that for me. I think one thing I want people to most definitely take away is to be curious over the next few days. Be curious, ask questions, make sure you have an open mind, and, you know, how to say it, I guess, be mindful that part of the reason that we're here and we're doing this, and the communities that are having these issues are some of the most ravaged, that you could possibly think of, and that being said, trust in systems doesn't really come easily for these people that are in these situations. You have to be genuine about the way that you're going to engage in these people. Like, lots of people have come before and said they want to help. We've had plenty of white savior mentality people come along. I'm going to fix it for Jimmy. I got it, because I'm going to come in with me and my opportunities, and we're going to fix it. We're going to make this right. We've all seen how that it turns out. We wouldn't need to have this symposium right now if that was any kind of a way or a solution. You have to meet people where they are. You can't just expect somebody to be like, oh, this is good for my kids, so I'm supposed to do it, right? No, it doesn't work like that. I mean, especially when you're talking about people that have been constantly victimized by things that were supposed to be there to help them out, to service them. So you have to be genuine in your, investment into these situations. So be curious, but also keep in mind the root causes that have brought us here, and, really lean in to try to be a part of that change.
I heard Kareem start us out talking in this section about relationships being at the center. And I kind of heard you round that out for us, Michael, in a different way, that the relationships, even with, that point around our systems, not only can we not totally rely on systems to do the whole work if there's not people behind them, but that trust has to be earned and it isn't automatically there. And I think that also speaks to the need to have the actual relationship, but also things I've also seen kind of as I'm looking at this chat and really to the work each of you does, but particularly you might go with Families in Action, that that starts with families being at the center of the conversation and families leading, hopefully, the change in those systems as well. Kareem, was there something you wanted to?
Yeah, if this is the last thing, I wanted to make sure I got one more thing in. I had an uncle who passed a little while ago, and he was from Alabama, and my uncle Arthur used to do the marches and all of that during the civil rights era, and he used to always talk about how when different things happened, people had all kind of stuff going on. Problems with kids, marital problems, money problems. Life was happening. It wasn't like, you see those images on the newsreel and you're like, oh, that's their whole life. No, these are regular people in their regular life. This is how they chose to meet the moment. It didn't mean that everything on their plate was good. It doesn't mean the conditions were right at work. It doesn't mean that the bills were getting paid. None of that. He said me, oh, so-and-so was going through a divorce and he was late to the rally because he's all shook up over his wife. Man, regular people do things because they feel called to do them. And it's not always clean. It's not always sanitized. Life happens. So our challenge is, Fanon talks about every generation in relative opacity has to find their mission and either fulfill it or betray it. It doesn't mean that you fulfill it only when conditions are right and when nobody's getting on your nerves. And in fact, when life happens, that's when we have to be willing to say, okay, what's my purpose in this moment? What's going to be different because I'm here? I'm going to do things in a way that I think meets the moment. So another challenge I have to everybody is to not think about this as being, some social justice crusade for the people who, they got a Superman cape on. No. Regular people just making a choice in their regular life to do what needs to be done to the best of their ability, and then letting the future kind of take care of itself. So that I think needs to be said, that it's not about the superintendent. It's not about, somebody that we elevate to hero status. It's us with all our issues and baggage and whatever else that life happens, just saying, okay, how can I meet this moment? How can I learn? How can I engage? How can I repair? And how can I go forward collectively for the betterment of kids?
Thank you for that. I think that notion of this sort of like this superhero syndrome that's assigned to people. And I think that when that happens, everyday people who can have major impact could literally change lives. Like the teacher who had intervention with me, she didn't know I was going to run a college access program helping thousands of students. She had no idea I'd be a professor. She showed up with her heart and she really transcended what my life could be. And I think that sometimes we're looking for great examples that fit this picture perfect mold of something when it's us just showing up and being ourselves and really doing the right thing at every opportunity that we have to do the right thing. So I really love that you said that, because like in essence, we are our own heroes and like we're here to save ourselves, and we can't wait for the system or for the right person to come along or somebody with the right, whatever the right is, because I don't even know in my work in this industry in terms of like, this is all the right things that you need in place. So I really like that you emphasize that. And like for the educators on the call, like you could be the difference between someone living out their dreams and like by you showing up and just doing the right thing.
Thank you to each of you. And I'm seeing the thank yous already in the chat, so I hope you get a chance to look at those, but thank you so much for being here. And I am going to transition us, because we also have another very special guest with us to lead the next part of our do a little bit of closing us out in our morning plenary. Nazshonnii is from present day West Oakland by the way of the Kinley Chi. She's a farmer, STEM educator, and engineer with a background in mechanical engineering, studio arts, and French and Francophone studies. She is with the Sogorea Land Trust, and today she is going to be leading us in a bit of I guess I'll say we started with wanting to make sure we did a land acknowledgement, acknowledging those who are on this land before us and whose land we sit on. And I'm happy to share that she kind of agreed to take it a little bit further. And so she's really going to be giving us a bit more to chew on today. So I hope you all, I want to say it was Michael who invited us all to be curious, because I know I'm coming into this with a lot of curiosity. And so I will invite her to take it away.
Thank you, Sanam. Also, thank you to all the speakers beforehand, Mr. McDonald, Dr. Anderson, Mr. Weaver, very resonating with a lot of the things that you've shared, and thinking about my own experiences in my education growing up in Oakland as well. So I wanted to start today off. It won't be as interactive as I hoped, but that's okay. I'd still love to have some of those answers in the chat and conversations going on in the platform. So I want to invite you all to answer this question: what is sacred to you? So when you think about sacred, think about things that are important to you. Think about places, think about people, whether they're here physically or they passed on or they're somewhere else in the world right now. So think about those moments and those sensations. Maybe it's a scent that you associate with memories, and please share that in the chat. You're welcome to share why it's sacred to you or why it is important to you. And yeah, just wanted to say that I'm here on behalf of the Sogorea Land Trust. We're an urban Indigenous woman-led land trust here in Oakland, present day Oakland, Huchen, which is the territory of the Ohlone people, specifically under the guidance of the Lashan Ohlone people. And the purpose of our organization is, it kind of boils down to returning Indigenous land to Indigenous hands. So our purpose is also confronting some of those things that we've talked about earlier today. So confronting legacies of colonization and everything that has stemmed from colonization and contact. And through our work, we're providing access for our communities to healthy and affordable produce. We're providing access for people to just breathe and to just be together, to laugh, to have ceremony, to just share laughter. We've celebrated weddings, and we've also mourned people in some of our spaces that we have in our different sites that are making sure that people have access to these places. So this is what Karina says, one of our directors and our co-founders: returning Indigenous land to Indigenous hands. And then I asked you all that question in the beginning because I wanted to share this excerpt from an interview of one of our co-directors, Janella. And it basically says that if there's something in your life that you value and you have, you have it in your life and it holds importance, or it has a sacredness to it, I'm also going to do everything in my power to protect it, to recognize it, and follow your lead, and do the same things that you do in order to interact with that sacred thing. So one of the sacred things for the Ohlone people in this area is the traditional arbor space that is in Deep East Oakland. So I think it was Mr. McDaniel, you were talking about growing up in Deep East Oakland. We now have an arbor space. This is the first in over 250 years that Ohlone people and even other California natives have seen this ceremonial arbor space. Because of contact, religion or a variation of religion and belief systems were wiped out, as well as culture and language were taken from Ohlone people and other native people in this area. Now they have this place where we talked about land access and communities gathering. So when we talk about our youth having literacy, access to improve their education, the right to education, improving their literacy, it's making sure that they have places where they can just relax. So they have outdoor spaces they can decompress and are not worried about looking over their shoulder or, where they have to go to eat that day. So this space, it ties all of that together, and it makes sure that, everyone in this community is doing something to recognize Ohlone people, but also to give back and to redistribute back into the community. Some of our main programs I have here on the screen. Language is a big part of it. And for the Ohlone people, there are language barriers that are taking on a lot. Culture barriers are taking on to make sure that this language does not go away. So when we talk about the traditional plants that we're working with, we're using the indigenous names for those plants. We're recognizing that there is a lineage of people that have been taking care of them and their knowledges and practices that we need to honor, and we need to make sure that they don't go away. And again, here's another picture of that arbor space, our ceremonial space. So we make sure that when we are welcoming people into this territory, we're holding protocol. We've had student youth groups come from all over the world. There was an Aboriginal youth group that came from Australia, and we did this exchange of, look at all these practices we do on the land and taking care of the land in a way that is non-extractive, that follows indigenous practices. And they showed us, look at all these dances and the songs that we've learned from our elders. And now we're coming here to have this exchange and be together. And we did that in this ceremonial space off of 105th and Eads. Other things that we're doing in a part of the land care is disaster preparedness. So we call them hametkas. So if anything were to happen, say earthquake or just power outages, anything like that, we have areas set up to make sure that people have access to clean water, they have access to dried goods. So our hope is to create more hametkas throughout Oakland, throughout the whole Bay Area, to make sure that people have the things they need in order to make sure that their family's good in case of disaster. And going back to the sacred again, so some of these plants we're working with, some of these spaces we're working with are sacred to California Native people here, specifically California natives from the Bay Area. So we're working with things like tule that hundreds and thousands of years ago, the people of this original land, they used that as a source for housing as well as transportation to make boats and other things like that. So rematriating the land, I think I kind of skipped over this earlier, but if you're familiar with their organization, we have the term rematriate the land. And I want to invite you all to think about this word, and I'll share a little bit about what it means to us in our organization and also to myself. So what does rematriate mean to you? To us, it refers to the matriarchs in our families. It refers to the fact that we have recipes, we have practices, we have knowledges that have been passed down, most often through our mothers and our grandmothers, or people that have filled those roles for us. So when we talk about rematriate, we talk about going back to the land that it was when it was 200 years plus before contact, when Ohlone people were living in abundance. They didn't have to worry about where to stay, where to eat, or am I safe here? So we want to go back as much as possible to returning to that original place and making sure that our communities now have that same abundance. And obviously we can't have it exactly the way it was. We're not going to be like, okay, you go back here, you go back here. And obviously some people that are benefiting from the legacy of colonization, there's a lot more work that they may have to do because they're still benefiting from it. So I invite you all to share what you think rematriation is after hearing about our projects and our connection with the land as well, and also calling in some of those things you talked about earlier. What is sacred to you? Caring for the land, woman as well as Mother Earth, exactly. So the act of repatriation, I want to add this as well, is returning ancestral remains to their homeland or to their birthplace. So if you have a relative that was born in Canada, you want to return them back. That is the act of repatriation. But when we talk about rematriation, it's returning the land back to when ecosystems are thriving, when pollinators were here. You notice that when you're in city areas, you don't see as many bugs. But maybe go back 10 generations or go back 10 decades or so, and you're seeing a shift in more and more of these animals and things that are great for our ecosystems. Mothering the earth as the earth mothers us, exactly. Returning to nature, community, and people over property, yes. Awesome, thank you all for sharing. And again, this is something that you all can take into other spaces and continue that conversation. So one of the main ways that we fund our projects is through Shumi. Shumi means gift in the Jorjani language. And it is completely voluntary. It's a tax that if you're living in one of the Ohlone territories or the Confederated Villages of Lashawn's territories, we invite you to give what you can. So you can look at, do I own a house? Do I rent? What's my income? You can look at these different factors and decide what's comfortable for you to make this voluntary land tax. That pays for our shovels in order for us to move the dirt and to create our gardens. That pays for the gas in our trucks, so that way we can deliver food bags to our elders who are in need of organic and healthy produce. This also pays for some of our supplies that go into the language work. So Deja's making sure that her children and other lonely people have access to their language. And yeah, this is really like funding the majority of our projects, in addition to our new land fund that we've created recently. So I wanted to leave you all with a couple different ways to engage with our work. I mostly talk with a lot of middle school and high school youth, so I like to keep things a little simple and then expand on them and answer questions. But I'm sure that you all can go through these and be like, okay, I know what to do here, I know what to do there. And these are my own personal suggestions just from talking with folks. So connecting to your own lineage, going back through your lineage and figuring out what are some of the experiences that you feel like you need to go into and unpack, but also recognizing that some of us have privileges throughout our lineage. So what are some of those things, whether it be wealth or just skin privilege or other things, or even access to education that you have, and you recognize that the folks around you do not have, and finding out what can you do to change that. What can you do to make sure that people that are living at certain disadvantages no longer have those disadvantages? Educate yourself. As we said earlier, if you're here, I think Sanam said that if you're here, you're a continuous learner. We're here to learn from each other. So if you find out something interesting, like, oh, today I learned that we are on the unceded land of Ohlone people, go out and share, like, I want to tell you more about the original people that are still here and that are still practicing their things despite colonization. Thinking about those places, wherever you live, wherever you work, wherever you are learning. If you're going to visit your grandma, your cousins in another part of the States, or you're going outside of the country, recognizing that there are Indigenous people in those places as well, and you have to honor them, and you have to uplift them and bring awareness to them, especially if they're still here. And then again, sharing that knowledge, going like, look what I've learned, and sharing that with other people. One of the big things that I stress on in going through these other steps is interrupting violence. And this can be done by, we've seen with recent protests, white folks putting their bodies in front of other people to make sure that they're not being attacked by the police. We've also seen this with speaking up. So maybe in the classroom, speaking up and bringing attention to a certain thing. Or if you see someone that has given out misinformation, or they've said, oh, well, I think this way about you, or I think this way about this people, being very clear and saying, like, I invite you, or I encourage you to look into that more, or actually that's incorrect. So disrupting all forms of violence, whether that's someone saying something, physically hurting someone, or participating in a system that is then creating more violence. And then lastly, being a better guest, or being a good guest. So this is something that the majority of us on this call are learning, unless we are Ohlone people, or unless we are California Native people. We are learning how to be better guests. And that all starts with asking permission and following the lead. So when we talked about, you think that this is sacred to you and this is important to you, I'm going to value this and respect it as well. Asking permission, how do I interact with this sacred thing that you hold dear to you? Or how do I enter this ceremonial space that you have created? And what are some of the things that I should do in order to honor it? And wanted to leave you all at this last slide, just some more pictures and our website as well. This is West Oakland, the Ramai Garden, and we've been able to rematriate this small piece of land, and we're hoping to eventually open it up to the community. That way, if you're near San Pablo Market, one of those streets, you can easily just walk over and harvest some greens, get some herbs and stuff like that. So that's one of our rematriation practices in place right now.
Thank you, Nazshonnii, for that. There were so many, for inviting us to also share what is sacred and to reflect on that. But there was so much, I think, again, you said, both because I'm seeing it, but for myself, I was writing down my little pieces that I want to take away and resonate. And one of those, of course, was learning to be a better guest, that you kind of ended with. And I just want to acknowledge, I was sort of playing back my introduction, and I'm wondering if my words were those that came before us, or if it was those implying that those who were only here before us. And I just wanted to take that moment to acknowledge my own learning, that I certainly want to make sure I'm saying and holding space that we are talking about, as you're sharing, folks who are very much still here, and not a past tense conversation. So just wanted to catch my own use of language and words in that. Thank you for sharing about the vital work that you do, that serves community and is also, just through your pictures, so beautiful and inspiring to see, and how we can support visibility and justice for Indigenous folks in our community. I know Sarah dropped a link, and you had some actions, and all these slides, of course, are available in the app, so folks can go back and reference and look at those actions again if they are things that popped on the screen too quickly for you to really capture. So again, I'll extend my big thank you, and I think speaking on everyone here who's listening, to thank you for sharing with us today. We are coming towards the end of our time together just for this opening plenary, and I think we'll close just a few minutes early. But I did want to just share a few things before we head off. I want to take a moment to both thank our speakers. So again, everyone who's been a part of this morning plenary and making this plenary happen, as well as a lot of our folks kind of in the background supporting folks on the tech. And I also just want to appreciate speakers, but also all of you kind of in the chat who've been bringing your own intention forward, and how your calls to action are really centering to create the drive we need to make change. As we head into the rest of today and into tomorrow, I encourage you to set your own intention as you leave here for our time together. We hope you connect. We hope you build with one another, to acknowledge your own power and influence in however small or large of a community that you feel you belong to and can serve, and that we all leave here with really a renewed call to action in the movement to ensure every child learns and loves to read, and every adult carries that with them through their life. I want to share a quick bit about our closing plenary, because the information came online pretty late. So I will see you again in our closing plenary at about 2:10, I can't remember the exact time, which is an opportunity to hear from three really incredible women, Dana Chilono, Aja Simmons, and Dulce Torres Petty, who are joining us in a conversation titled Literacy, Leadership, and Representation. And so hopefully that tells you a bit about the things that they will be talking about as folks who are serving children and families, students and adults around the goal of kind of improving outcomes and learning. So that's what we'll be doing with them at 2:10, and we'll also have a really special performance by a Youth Speaks poet, Nehemiah Vaughn. And in the meantime, we are about to get you out of here, and then there'll be a small transition into the next set of workshops. Our workshop block for this morning is Arguing the Case for Student Learning, Math and Storybooks, and Help Wanted Change Makers for Literacy Instruction that Kareem is leading. So there are several choices for you to take a look at. And again, if you have not joined in the Whovet Hap or you came in a little late, there is a lot of good stuff for you to navigate, both learn about the sessions that you want to check out, but also some prizes. Don't forget to vote for the photo that you think is the best, and use that. Obviously the prize is great, but really it's more about having an opportunity for folks to share your own wisdom, your own articles, your own ideas and thoughts, and engage with one another. We'll call it our kind of virtual hallway, since we aren't live in person with one another today. And so with that, I will close out this session, and thank you all for being here with us. And we will see you in the next block.